He didn't remember the vows, not the crowd, not the way the violinists played through the silence like ghosts trying to cover a tragedy. Julian Knox remembered only 2 words from the woman he loved. I can't. And then, the sound of gasps, phones rising, his name trending for all the wrong reasons. The heir to a billion-dollar empire stood alone at the altar, humiliated, abandoned, live-streamed. He ran, in his tuxedo, through the city, in the rain, until his knees buckled in a random 24-hour grocery aisle beside a wooden display of roses. Soaked, shaking, mascara smudged across his shoulder from a hug she never meant, and a future that no longer existed. That's where she found him. A stranger, hair in a lazy bun, a pencil stuck through it, oat milk and tampons in her cart. She didn't know who he was, and she didn't care. She knelt beside him and whispered, I've got tea and towels across the street. Come on, let's get you out of this. He followed her, because heartbreak doesn't care about last names. It just wants relief. She didn't fix him. She wrecked him. With her mouth, with her moans, with the way she didn't ask for anything but gave him everything. Weeks later, she would tell him something, those words that would change the course of this beautiful story of passion and redemption. Beautiful family, if you are new here, subscribing to this channel by hitting on the subscribe button below will help YouTube push this video to more amazing souls like you. Please also hit the like button and share this wonderful story of love with your amazing friends because it helps YouTube know this story matters. And now, let's dive straight in. Julian Knox stood at the altar with practiced posture, shoulders back, jaw locked, a hint of polished indifference painted across his face. But inside, he was cracking. He heard it before he saw it. I can't. 2 words, not loud, not dramatic, but final. He turned his head sharply. Liliana was already stepping backward, bouquet trembling in her hand, designer heels hesitant on the marble aisle. Her father didn't stop her. The guests didn't breathe. Julian didn't move. The officiant looked confused. The wedding planner clutched her headset. The floral arch above them swayed slightly in the breeze from the overhead fans, petals drifting like funeral confetti. Julian blinked once, twice. His bride, his fiancée of 3 years, the woman who had approved every napkin and flower and seating chart, was walking away in front of 300 people. Then came the gasps. Then came the phones. A second later, one of the bridesmaids broke into tears. Someone whispered, She's leaving him. Someone else murmured, Is this real? His face was already on the live stream. The comments rolled in. WTF just happened? Wait, she left? I'd die if that happened to me. Julian Knox, heir to the Knox global empire, was trending for all the wrong reasons. He didn't wait for the applause or the pity. He turned and walked, no, stormed, down the side aisle and out of the venue. His mother called his name. His security detail tried to follow. He didn't stop. The street outside felt too bright. He yanked off his bow tie, let it fall to the sidewalk. His shoes, black Italian leather, hit puddles as he walked through the city. He ignored the drivers who recognized him, ignored the questions, the honks, the flashing notifications on his phone. His entire life, his planned life, his calculated future, just vanished with a whisper. It started to rain. Hard. The perfect wedding suit clung to his skin. His cufflinks slid down his wrists. Water streaked through his hair, down his face, over his lips. People passed him like he didn't exist. A woman carrying a latte. A couple arguing over umbrellas. A food delivery guy singing along to a pop song. None of them knew that the man walking beside them had just been publicly destroyed. Julian didn't know where he was going. He didn't care. After what felt like hours, his steps slowed. The buzzing lights of a late-night grocery store flickered ahead. He didn't think. He didn't plan. He just pushed open the glass door and walked in. The cold air hit him hard. He wandered through the aisles, aimless. His wet shoes squeaked on the linoleum. His fingers brushed against cereal boxes, canned soup, glass jars of honey he couldn't name. Then he saw them. Roses. A display stand near the end of aisle 9. Red, soft, fresh. Someone had tried to stack them neatly. A little too neatly. And maybe it was the smell, or the memory, or the absurdity of it all. But that's where his knees gave out. He collapsed right there, among the roses, breathing hard, water dripping from his face to the linoleum. One stem poked into his ribs. A petal clung to his cheek. He didn't care. His breath hitched, then broke. The sob escaped his chest like it had been locked inside for years. No cameras, no headlines. Just a man who was supposed to have everything, losing the one thing he couldn't buy: love. He didn't notice the woman at first. She had walked in for oat milk. Instead, she saw a man in a drenched tuxedo, curled beside a floral stand like a ghost of heartbreak. She paused, brows drawn, curious, cautious. He didn't look up, but she stepped closer anyway, and when she spoke, it didn't sound like judgment. It sounded like mercy. "Sir," her voice was gentle, not intrusive, not afraid. Just human. Julian looked up slowly. A woman stood above him, framed by rows of dish soap and crackers. Her brown eyes blinked once, processing the absurdity. A billionaire in a soaking tuxedo, crouched among roses like a man who had nothing left. He tried to answer. Couldn't. She crouched down to his level, careful not to slip. "You okay?" she asked, voice low. He let out a sharp breath, more sigh than laugh. "I got left at the altar." Her lips parted. "In that?" He glanced down at himself. Bow tie gone, shirt clinging to his chest, vest wrinkled and sagging. "I haven't changed." He rubbed a hand across his forehead. Didn't see the point. She nodded slowly, setting her oat milk beside her sneakers. "You're crying in the floral section. Ironic, right?" She tilted her head. "Maybe. Or poetic." He scoffed. "Yeah, well, I've had enough poetry for one lifetime." A silence fell between them. Not awkward, just thick with exhaustion. Julian noticed a pencil in her hair, the faint scent of vanilla around her. She didn't ask who he was, didn't ask what he did. She just looked at him like a person, not a headline. He shifted slightly, wincing. A thorn had pierced his palm. She noticed, pulled a tissue from her bag and offered it. He took it. "Thank you. No problem." "I'm Noelle," she said after a pause. "Julian. I figured." She smiled faintly. "You're on a billboard across from my job." He let out a small laugh. "Of course I am." She didn't stand up, didn't leave, just sat on the cold floor next to him. After a moment, she said, "You look like you could use something warmer than fluorescent lights and regret." He blinked. "What?" "I work across the street. I've got tea, dry towels, and my shift starts in an hour. If you want to sit somewhere that doesn't smell like cleaning detergent, I'm offering." He stared at her. "Why?" Noelle shrugged. "Because you're a person, and I've been where you are. Not in a tux, but close enough." He looked at her, really looked. No gloss, no filters, just kindness and curves and confidence in her stillness. He could have said no, should have, maybe, but something in him leaned toward her. Something raw, something reckless. "Okay," he whispered. They stood. She took her oat milk. He left the roses. Together, they walked out of the store, back into the rain. But this time, it didn't feel quite so cold. Her apartment was barely across the street, tucked above a closed cafe with a flickering neon sign. He followed her up a narrow stairwell, shoes squelching, the sound of water trailing behind him like an echo. She unlocked the door and pushed it open. "Come in." "Shoes off, though. I just mopped." He towed them off clumsily and stepped inside. Warmth. It wasn't fancy. A studio with thrift store furniture and walls painted in soft golds and creams. A cinnamon candle burned on the windowsill. A fuzzy gray cat peeked out from under the futon and immediately vanished again. Noelle tossed her keys in a bowl by the door and handed him a towel. "Bathroom's there. Dry off. I'll get the kettle going." Julian nodded, silent. The towel smelled like lavender. He disappeared into the bathroom and stared at himself in the mirror. Red-rimmed eyes, jaw tight, mascara still faint on his shoulder. His reflection looked like someone who had just escaped a wreck, or maybe crawled out of one. He splashed cold water on his face, then dried off and stepped back into the main room, shirt clinging to his chest. Noelle had changed into a long t-shirt and fuzzy socks. She poured tea into mismatched mugs and handed him one. "Chamomile. It's not whiskey, but it helps." He accepted it, hands wrapped tight around the heat. "Thank you." She sat cross-legged on the futon, sipping her own. He didn't know what to do with himself. Standing felt awkward. sitting, felt vulnerable. Crying had already happened. What came next? She patted the seat beside her. I don't bite. Julian sat. They sipped in silence for a moment. Finally she asked, So, what happened? He stared at the steam curling from his mug. She walked away. At the altar, in front of everyone, said she couldn't do it. Damn. He gave a dry laugh. Yeah, pretty much. She didn't give you a heads up? Nope. Spent 3 years planning this wedding. $3 million, 600 guests. And apparently she had doubts the whole time. Noelle whistled low. That's cold. Julian nodded. And stupid me didn't see it coming. Love makes fools of all of us. He glanced over. You speak from experience? She sipped her tea. An ex-fiancé. Slept with my best friend. I found out 2 days before we moved in together. Ouch. Yup. Julian leaned back against the futon. Noelle looked over at him. You gonna be okay? I don't know. That's fair. Another beat of silence. This one felt softer, less full of shock, more filled with breath. He turned to her, really studying her now. The curve of her jaw, the way her nose crinkled when she sipped too hot. She was beautiful in a way that didn't feel rehearsed. Why are you doing this? He asked. She looked over, lips quirking. Because you looked like you needed a place to fall apart. He swallowed hard. I've never met anyone like you, he said. She smirked. You haven't even seen my cat in action yet. That made him laugh. And for the first time in hours, the knot in his chest loosened. She rose to refill her cup, tugging the oversized shirt down her thigh as she passed him. Julian's gaze lingered, but not in hunger, more in wonder. Noelle had a way of moving that felt unbothered, soft but certain, as if she wasn't trying to impress anyone. And that made her even more magnetic. I still can't believe you invited me here, he said. She glanced over her shoulder. Why not? I mean, most people would have kept walking. Noelle turned, leaned against the kitchen counter, and folded her arms. I don't like watching people fall apart alone. Even strangers? She shrugged. Especially strangers. People expect pain from the ones they know. But strangers, they let the walls fall faster. He blinked. Is this where you give me some philosophical truth? He asked. No. She smiled faintly. This is where I offer you my favorite hoodie and ask if you're planning to stay for a bit, or if you need a cab. He let out a small breath. I don't want to go home. You live in a skyscraper. I don't care. She pushed away from the counter and disappeared down the hall. Moments later, she returned with a white t-shirt, soft, small, floral printed. Sorry, it's all I've got that isn't covered in glitter or bleach stains. Julian stared at it, then at her. She shrugged. I'm not exactly your size. He took it. When he came back from changing, the shirt was hilariously snug. It hugged his biceps, barely reached his waist. She stared for a second too long. You okay? He asked. Her lips twitched. You look like a Victoria's Secret ad. I'll take that as a compliment. He walked back to the couch and sat beside her. Close, closer than before. She didn't move away. The rain drummed outside. A car honked in the distance. But inside, time stilled. He looked at her. You're really not going to ask me anything? Nope. You don't want to know how much money I have or who my father is. She shook her head. I don't need to know the resume. I saw the man on the floor. That's enough. Julian swallowed. The tightness returned, but not the same kind. This wasn't grief. It was something else, something warmer. I want to kiss you, he said suddenly. She looked at him, eyes calm. So kiss me. And he did. Slowly, softly, with no calculation. Her lips opened for him like they'd been waiting. Her fingers curled into his shirt. His hands found her waist. The kiss deepened. Time disappeared. And in that moment, neither of them felt like strangers anymore. The kiss didn't end so much as melt into something else. He tilted his head, deepening it. She sighed into his mouth, fingers gripping the back of his neck. The t-shirt pulled tight across his chest as she leaned closer, straddling his lap without a word. Julian's hands found her waist, warm and solid beneath the cotton. He hadn't touched anyone like this in months, not like this. Not without expectations or reputation hovering above it. Noelle kissed him like he wasn't someone on a magazine cover. She kissed him like he was just a man, hurt, healing, hungry. When they finally broke apart, their foreheads rested together, both breathless. She whispered, "That wasn't smart." He smirked. "Didn't feel stupid." "I didn't say stupid. I said smart." She pulled back slightly, her voice low. "You just got left at the altar." "I'm aware. And I'm the woman who found you crying beside supermarket roses." "Also true." She studied him, as if waiting for a sign of regret. But Julian didn't flinch. "I don't want to go back to that world tonight. I don't want to think about her. He reached up, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. "I just want to feel something real." Noelle's expression softened. She stood. He thought she might walk away. Instead, she held out her hand. "Come here." Julian followed her through a short hallway into her bedroom. It was small, cozy, lived in. A bookshelf leaned against the wall, overflowing with fiction and folded laundry. A candle flickered on the nightstand. The sheets were soft gray. The only sound was the rain. She pulled him in. When the backs of her knees hit the bed, she paused, looked up at him. "You sure?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." She reached for his waist, fingers slipping beneath the hem of the shirt. "Lift." He obeyed, raising his arms as she peeled the damp fabric over his head. Her hands trailed down his chest, fingertips grazing the ridges of muscle. "You're soaked," she murmured. "You're warm." She smiled. "We'll fix that." She stepped back and peeled off her own shirt. No theatrics. No slow seduction. Just a woman shedding armor. Julian's gaze dragged over her skin. Soft curves, bare breasts, a tattoo near her ribs he couldn't make out in the low light. "You're beautiful," he said. Her mouth quirked. "You sound surprised." "I'm not. I'm stunned." She took his hand and climbed onto the bed, pulling him down with her. They landed in a tangle of limbs and breath and want. He kissed her again, harder now. Her nails scratched lightly along his back as he pressed his weight into her. Noelle moaned softly, shifting beneath him. The friction ignited something hot between them. He pulled back just enough to murmur, "You're sure? I wouldn't have let you in if I wasn't." Julian kissed down her neck, across her collarbone, to the soft dip between her breasts. She arched into him, her hands threading into his damp hair. She smelled like vanilla and something citrusy. He wanted to memorize every inch. Their bodies moved in a rhythm that felt inevitable. Her skin against his lips finding every place that made her gasp. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. By the time he slid inside her, both of them were trembling. Noelle's head fell back against the pillow, her breath catching. "God, Julian." He grunted softly, holding her hips steady as he began to move. Slow, deep, every thrust a silent promise. Outside, thunder rumbled. Inside, the world narrowed to touch and sound. They moved together like a tide, rising, breaking, pulling back, and rising again. Her moans grew louder, more desperate, her fingers digging into his arms. Julian kissed her forehead, her cheek, her lips. "You feel like home." Her reply was a gasp, a cry, her thighs tightening around him as she started to come undone. He followed her, burying his face in her neck as his body gave in. After, they lay still, entwined. His hand traced idle lines along her spine. Her breath cooled against his chest. She whispered, "Did that help?" Julian looked up at the ceiling, eyes glassy. "More than you'll ever know." Julian traced his thumb along the soft curve of her hip, marveling at how quiet the world had gone. Just her breath, his heart, the rain whispering against the windows. She lay curled against his chest, her hands splayed across his torso, fingertips warm and gentle. He tilted his head and kissed the crown of her head. "You smell like cinnamon." Noelle smiled against his skin. "It's my shampoo, and my candles, and my soul." He laughed softly, tightening his arm around her. "You really have no idea what you just did to me." Her hand moved lower, teasing along the waistband of his briefs. "I could guess. I'm serious." He looked down at her. "That wasn't just a rebound. I felt everything." Noelle leaned up on one elbow, her gaze deep and unreadable. "I didn't do it out of pity, Julian." He searched her eyes. "I did it because I wanted to know how it would feel," she continued. "To touch someone who's hurting but still wants to give something back." Julian leaned forward and kissed her again, slower this time, more deliberate. A conversation made entirely of mouths and breath. She shifted, pressing him back into the sheets. Her thighs straddled him again, but this time with complete control. Her hair spilled over her shoulder, brushing his cheek as she kissed down his neck. "I'm not done with you," she whispered. His hands slid up her thighs. "Good." She rocked her hips slightly, just enough to make him groan. His body stirred instantly, hardening beneath her. She leaned down and kissed his chest, licking a slow line down to his stomach. "Noel." He breathed. "I like how you say my name," she murmured, eyes locked on his. She moved lower, kissing just above his waistband. Then she peeled the fabric down slowly, revealing him. He was already fully hard, aching. Noel smiled like a woman with a secret. Then she lowered her mouth. Warm, wet, perfect. Julian's head fell back against the pillow, his fingers threading into her hair. Her tongue moved expertly, slowly, savoring every inch of him. She moaned softly, sending vibrations up his spine. "Jesus," he muttered, hips twitching. She took him deeper, hands gripping his thighs, owning every second. When he was on the edge, she pulled away, eyes glinting with amusement. "You like teasing?" he asked, voice hoarse. "I like control." He sat up fast, grabbing her waist and flipping her onto her back with a grin. "So do I." She laughed, breathless, just before his mouth covered hers again. He kissed her hard, his hands sliding down to part her thighs. He found her already drenched. Julian groaned. "You're soaking." "For you," she whispered, wrapping her legs around his hips. He dipped his fingers between her folds, teasing her slowly. She arched her back, biting her lip. "Please," she gasped. "I thought you liked control." I lied. He pushed inside her in one slow thrust and she cried out, raw, open, beautiful. Julian paused, just to feel her. She clenched around him, her heels pressing into his back. Then he moved. Long, deep strokes. Their bodies rocked in rhythm, sweat slicking their skin. Her hands clutched his shoulders, her lips kissing anything she could reach, his jaw, his collarbone, his mouth. "I can't," she whispered. "Come," he said, voice ragged. "Let go." She shattered around him, a cry breaking from her throat. Her nails dug into his back, her body trembling beneath him. He wasn't far behind. With a deep groan, he drove into her one last time and spilled inside her, burying his face in her neck. They collapsed together, tangled and spent. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Noel brushed his hair back and said softly, "That was irresponsible." Julian kissed her shoulder. "That was unforgettable." She smiled, sleepy and sated. "And now," she said, stretching lazily, "you're never going back to tuxedos again, are you?" "Never," he murmured, "unless you're the one waiting at the end of the aisle." Her breath caught. But she didn't say anything. Not yet. She woke to fingers tracing her spine, slow, reverent, unhurried. Julian lay beside her, propped on one elbow, his eyes drinking her in like he hadn't had enough, even after everything they'd just done. The morning light crept through her curtains, brushing their bare skin with a soft glow. Noel blinked up at him, her voice husky from sleep. "You're staring." "I'm memorizing," he whispered. She smiled, stretching, the sheets slipping down to reveal the swell of her chest. His eyes followed the movement, heat flickering behind his calm exterior. "Don't you have an empire to run?" she teased. "Not today." His hand slid from her back to her waist. "Today, I worship." He leaned down and pressed a kiss between her breasts, then lower, dragging his lips along her stomach, leaving a trail of warmth in his wake. Noel let out a soft gasp, fingers sliding into his hair. Julian kissed along her hip, then down to her inner thigh, taking his time, like each inch of her skin was sacred, like touching her was a prayer. He looked up at her from between her legs. "You're perfect." She tried to speak, but her breath hitched as he dipped his head and kissed her there, slowly, teasingly. His tongue traced every curve, every fold, tasting her like she was a delicacy made only for him. She moaned, hips lifting, hands fisting the sheets. He held her gently, kissing deeper now, rhythm steady, tongue dancing in ways that made her lose track of time. Her legs trembled. Her body climbed toward the edge. "Julian," she breathed. Oh God." He didn't stop. Her climax tore through her like a wave crashing against rocks, loud, raw, shattering. She gasped his name, thighs locking around his head, body arching as she came undone. He stayed there, kissing her through it, holding her while she trembled. Then he kissed his way back up, settling above her, his lips brushing her collarbone, then her mouth. She tasted herself on his lips, and somehow that made her want him more. He slid inside her again, slow, deep, every inch a reminder of how connected they'd become. This wasn't like the night before. It wasn't about lust. It was about closeness, healing, intimacy. They moved together like lovers who knew each other's pain. Her arms wrapped around his neck, holding him close as their bodies rocked in quiet rhythm. He whispered her name like a vow. She kissed his shoulder, his jaw, his mouth. He went deeper, groaning softly as she clenched around him. "I don't want this to be just a night," he murmured. "It isn't," she whispered back. They picked up speed, her legs wrapped tightly around his waist, her nails trailing down his back. The bed creaked beneath them, but neither cared. Noelle cried out again as another climax built, tight and sharp and impossible to ignore. He held her tighter, pushing harder until they unraveled together, his voice lost in her skin, hers echoing in his mouth. When they finally collapsed, their bodies coated in sweat and breathless, he didn't let her go. Julian kissed her temple, murmuring against her hair. "You feel like mine." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she took his hand and placed it over her heart. "Yours," she whispered. And they lay there, skin to skin, hearts beating in unison, like the world outside didn't matter, because in that room, something sacred had begun. She didn't expect him to still be there when she woke again, but he was, curled around her like a shield, his hand resting lightly over her stomach, his face buried in the crook of her neck. Noelle exhaled softly. Julian stirred behind her, warm breath brushing her skin. "You were watching me sleep." Caught red-handed, she murmured. He smiled into her shoulder. "Did I pass inspection?" "You exceeded expectations." He chuckled, then shifted, lips finding her bare shoulder. He kissed a path from there to her jawline, slow and lazy. "Tell me what you're thinking," she whispered. "That I could stay here forever." She turned in his arms, meeting his gaze. "Then do." The words hung between them, more than just an invitation, a challenge, a truth. Julian leaned in and kissed her again. It started soft, but it didn't stay there. His tongue slid against hers, hand drifting from her waist to her thigh, pulling her leg around his hip. She moaned into his mouth as he pressed against her, hard, hot, already ready. "You never get tired?" She teased between kisses. "Of you? Never?" He rolled her beneath him, their bodies fitting perfectly. He kissed her again, deeply, thoroughly, then trailed down, revisiting every place he had worshipped earlier, slower now, more indulgent. Her breath caught as he took one nipple into his mouth, circling it with his tongue before gently sucking. His hand massaged the other, fingers pinching just enough to make her squirm. "You're going to kill me," she gasped. "I'll resurrect you after," he whispered. He kissed down her stomach, tongue dancing along the edges of her tattoo. She was already slick again, ready before he even reached her center. He dipped his fingers between her legs, spreading her open. "So wet for me. Only for you," she breathed. His mouth replaced his hand, and she cried out, fingers tangling in his hair as he devoured her like she was the only thing he needed to survive. He moaned against her, the vibration sending shivers through her core. His tongue teased her clit in slow circles, then faster, then soft again. Never predictable, always perfect. "No, wait, Julie and I." She tried to push him away, but he gripped her hips and kept going. "I want to taste you," he growled. "All of it." She shattered again, harder than before, thighs trembling, voice breaking as pleasure exploded through her. He didn't stop until her body sagged, boneless. When he finally came up, his lips glistened. His eyes were molten. "You make me greedy," he said. She dragged him up by the neck and kissed him hard, tasting herself, tasting him, tasting everything that had bloomed between them in the night. Then she pushed him onto his back. "My turn." Julian raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. She straddled him slowly, her wetness dragging across his hardness. She rocked her hips, teasing both of them, watching his jaw clench, watching restraint slip from his grip. "God, Noelle." She took him inside inch by inch, sinking down with a long shared moan. They both stilled. Then she started to ride him, slow, deep strokes that had them both gasping. Julian's hands gripped her waist, but he let her set the pace. She leaned back, hands braced on his thighs. her breasts bouncing with every motion. His eyes were locked on her. "You're going to be the death of me," he groaned. "Then die beautifully," she whispered, grinding harder. Her body tensed as another climax crept in. She rode it, chasing it, until her back arched and she cried out, clenching around him. Julian lost it. He sat up, pulling her tight, thrusting from beneath her as he came hard, holding her close as his body jerked and released deep inside her. They collapsed again, chests heaving, limbs tangled. Silence. Only their breathing. Only their heartbeat. Only that feeling of something changing, something neither of them wanted to name too soon, but both silently knew was real. She nuzzled into his neck. "You still planning to leave today?" He kissed her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere." Julian never went back to his penthouse. Not the next morning. Not the next week. Not even after his PR team called 27 times, demanding explanations and headlines and control. He ignored them all. He stayed in Noelle's apartment, where the sheets smelled like her skin and the air was thick with cinnamon and sex, where no one expected him to wear a suit or say the right thing or pretend he was fine. She made coffee in oversized mugs. He made omelets that always came out slightly burnt. They fought over the shower. They collapsed into bed between shifts like it was their sanctuary. At night, he read beside her while she worked on crossword puzzles. He couldn't concentrate. She'd stretch out across the futon in nothing but his dress shirt and fuzzy socks, her legs bare and her glasses sliding down her nose. Every time she bit the end of her pen, he wanted her mouth somewhere else entirely. Sometimes she caught him staring. "Problem, Knox?" she'd ask, eyes teasing. "Yeah," he'd growl. "I need you. Now." And she'd smile that smile and toss the book aside. They made love on every surface. Against the fridge, with her legs wrapped around his waist. On the rug, where he pinned her hands and kissed her like a starving man. On the balcony, at midnight, under the glow of city lights, where she whispered his name like it was a secret meant only for stars. But it wasn't just the sex. It was the way she saw him. The way she didn't flinch when he told her about his mother, how she died when he was 12, or how his father used his grief as a tool to sharpen him into something cold and relentless. Noelle never offered pity. She listened. When he paused, she waited. And when he finally broke down in her arms, she held him tighter, not looser. "I was raised to believe love was leverage," he confessed one night, head resting on her chest. Noelle stroked his hair. "And now?" He looked up. "Now I think it's the only thing keeping me from disappearing." She kissed his forehead and whispered, "Good, then stay." He did. He stayed and learned her routines, her quirks, the way she hummed while folding laundry, the way she hated mint chocolate anything, how she always touched him when she passed, shoulder, arm, chest, like she needed to feel him just to be sure he was real. Julian was addicted, not to her body, though he craved that endlessly. He was addicted to her stillness, her truth, her ability to look at chaos and smile anyway. Noelle, too, began to soften. Let him in. Showed him the box of letters her father never replied to. Told him about the time she ran away at 15, only to come back after 12 hours with a sprained ankle and no courage left. Julian kissed the old scar on her knee and said, "You were brave. You still are." And she believed him, because for the first time in years, someone meant it. They didn't define it, didn't label it, but the thing between them grew, bold, honest, insatiable. And with every night they tangled beneath her sheets, with every morning she whispered his name before her first breath. Julian realized something terrifying. He hadn't fallen in love with her. He'd landed in it, head first, blindfolded, without any warning, and he didn't want to get out. He came home late from grabbing groceries, something he never did before Noelle. As he turned the key, the apartment was dim, quiet, save for the faint sound of soft jazz spilling from a Bluetooth speaker on the windowsill. "Noelle?" he called. He set the bags down. Then he saw it, her silhouette, on the bed, bare skin against the soft gray sheets, legs crossed, hair down, one hand resting just below her navel, the other holding the remote. "You were gone too long," she said, her voice like warm honey. His heart kicked in his chest. Julian stepped toward her slowly, drinking her in. Her nipples were hard, her lips slightly parted, and there was a glint in her eyes, mischievous, aching. "I missed you," she whispered. He didn't speak. He couldn't. He just took off his jacket and walked toward her like a man possessed. Noelle sat up and reached for his belt, fingers nimble, lips grazing his stomach as she worked it open. She kissed the trail of hair below his navel. When she slid his pants down, he was already hard. God, she breathed. Always ready for me. For no one else, he rasped. She licked the length of him, slow and intentional. His knees nearly buckled. He reached for the headboard to steady himself as her mouth wrapped around him. She didn't rush. She teased. She made him wait. When she finally pulled back, his entire body was humming. Lie down, she said, guiding him onto the bed. Julian obeyed. Noelle straddled him, bare and glowing in the low light, her curves casting soft shadows on his chest. She leaned forward and kissed him, deep, wet, slow, letting him feel her before she gave him everything. Then she lowered herself onto him, gasping as he filled her. Their hands found each other, fingers lacing. She rolled her hips, riding him with practiced control, slow and deep, until he groaned beneath her. You're mine, she whispered. All yours, he breathed, eyes locked on hers. She moved faster, the slick sound of their bodies colliding matching the rhythm of her gasps. Her hair fell forward, framing her face as she rode him harder, deeper, her thighs trembling against his. Touch yourself, he said. She did. Her fingers circled her clit as he thrust up into her, harder, deeper. Julian, I'm close. Come for me, he growled, gripping her hips. She came with a cry, body convulsing, back arching. Her hand squeezed his as she lost control. He flipped her onto her back, never pulling out, and started driving into her again, hard, relentless, claiming every part of her. Her cries turned into moans, moans into desperate gasps. Their skin slapped. Their bodies shook. Harder, she begged. He gripped the headboard and gave her everything. They reached the edge together, and when they fell hard, both of them crying out, bodies locked, heat surging through every vein. After, they collapsed, tangled and breathless. The music kept playing. The rain started again outside. She curled into him, legs slung over his waist, her fingers lazily tracing the lines on his chest. Don't go back, she said quietly. I'm not, he replied, voice steady. This, us, it's all I want. Noelle looked up at him, her eyes soft. Even if it never makes sense to the rest of the world? He pulled her closer. Especially then. They lay in silence for a while, the kind that speaks louder than words. And when sleep finally pulled her under, Julian stayed awake a little longer. Just to watch her breathe. Just to remind himself that this wasn't a dream. It was 2:17 a.m. when Julian rolled over and noticed the space beside him was empty. The sheets were still warm, but she was gone. He sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, heart picking up pace. The apartment was dark except for a faint glow under the bathroom door. The soft hum of the overhead fan buzzed through the silence. He stood, pulled on his boxers, and crossed the room quietly. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, she sat on the closed toilet lid, knees tucked to her chest, arms wrapped around them, tears streaming down her face. Noelle? She flinched at the sound of his voice. He stepped in and knelt in front of her. Talk to me. Her breath was shaky. She looked at him with eyes wide and glassy. I took 3 tests. Julian's brow furrowed. Tests? She nodded and reached for the bathroom counter. 3 pink sticks sat there, all lined up, all positive. I'm pregnant, she said, voice barely audible. Silence, thick and heavy. He stared at the sticks. At her, at the way she was trying to hold herself together and falling apart all at once. His jaw tightened. His heartbeat thundered. Then he dropped to his knees fully and took her hands. Are you sure? He whispered. I've never been more sure of anything, she said. I was late. I took 1, then 2 more. I didn't know how to tell you. Julian exhaled sharply and placed his palm on her belly, bare, soft, untouched by change, but suddenly carrying everything. Her voice trembled. I don't expect anything. I can raise... No, he said firmly, eyes locking with hers. Stop. Don't say that. You're not doing this alone. She blinked. But your life, your world, it's complicated. I walked away from that world the moment you opened your door. Tears spilled faster now. What if you regret it? What if this isn't what you... He leaned in and kissed her. Not out of passion, but promise. When he pulled back, He rested his forehead to hers. I want this. I want them. And I want you. Her lips trembled. I'm scared. So am I. But I've never been more sure of anything either. They sat there on the bathroom floor, hands entwined, hearts pounding. Together. Noelle wasn't alone anymore, and neither was he. Julian helped her up from the bathroom floor without letting go of her hand. He walked her back to bed, pulled the covers up around them both, and tucked her against his chest like she was something fragile he'd never let break again. Neither of them spoke for a while. The weight of the moment hung between them, but so did something softer, relief. He kissed her forehead. I meant what I said, he murmured. You're not alone in this. Noelle shifted slightly, her fingers grazing his chest. It's not just the baby. I've spent most of my life expecting people to leave. Julian looked down at her. I'm not going anywhere. She hesitated. You sure? He pulled her closer. I've never been more certain about anything. What we have, it's real. You didn't find me. You rescued me. A breath escaped her lips. It wasn't a sob, not quite. But something released in her chest, and she melted into him, her tears soaking his skin. Hey, he whispered, brushing her hair back. This doesn't have to be scary. We'll figure it out together. She nodded, her eyes wet but steady. Then she reached for him, slow, hesitant, searching. Julian kissed her lips, gentle at first, then deeper. I need to feel you, she whispered. You have me, he replied. He rolled them gently, hovering above her, his palm resting flat against her belly as he looked down at her face. I want to remember this, he said. Every part. He kissed her again, slower now, more tender. He moved down her body with devotion, her collarbone, the soft swell of her breast, the curve of her stomach. When he kissed just below her navel, she shivered. You're carrying a part of me now, he whispered, voice breaking. And I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of both of you. She pulled him up, lips finding his, arms wrapping around his neck. Her thighs opened for him, welcoming, ready. When he entered her, it wasn't frantic or wild, it was reverent. They moved in slow unison, eyes locked, breath shared. He held her like she might disappear. She gripped him like she finally knew she wouldn't. Their bodies rose together, joined by something deeper than lust. Need, yes, but also hope. Her moans were soft and broken. His name slipped from her lips like a prayer. When they came, it wasn't loud. It was a whisper of forever. 3 months later, the city skyline blazed behind them, silver, amber, and infinite. Julian had rented the entire rooftop of an art gallery in Tribeca, but not for a crowd. Just for them. Noelle stood at the edge, barefoot, her belly rounding beneath a flowing silk dress. The breeze tangled her curls as she leaned against the railing, hands resting protectively over the life growing inside her. Julian approached from behind, carrying nothing but a folded blanket and a velvet box in his pocket. You always this dramatic? She asked softly, without turning. He grinned. You said you liked stargazing. I didn't say I needed a private rooftop for it. I don't do things halfway. She turned to face him, eyes narrowing playfully. And what exactly is this? He spread the blanket on the deck and knelt, not on one knee, just to sit beside her like he always had, grounded and close. This, he said, reaching into his pocket, is the rest of my life. He held out the box, but didn't open it yet. Before you say anything, he continued, I need you to know something. She nodded, expression shifting. I met you when I was wrecked, not just sad, not just heartbroken. I was hollow. Everything about my life was planned, perfect on paper, but none of it was mine. He paused, glancing down, then back up. But you didn't fix me. You didn't try to. You just sat beside me. You let me fall apart and didn't flinch. Her throat moved, eyes already welling. You loved me without knowing all the rules I was supposed to follow. You didn't care about my last name or the mess that followed me. You just saw me. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, set with a single brilliant oval diamond in a rose gold band. I want to choose you, Noelle, not because of timing or obligation or any perfect plan. I want to choose you because you are my peace. You are the only thing that ever made me feel like I belonged in my own story. Her hand flew to her mouth. Julian stood and took her hand, lowering to one knee this time. I want every broken piece of me to belong to you. Will you marry me? Noelle didn't wait. She didn't need to. Yes, she whispered, pulling him up into a kiss. Then again, louder, yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and they both stared at it for a long moment. Then she laughed, through tears. "You know this doesn't mean you get to skip diaper duty, right?" Julian grinned, cupping her face. "I'll change 1,000 diapers for a lifetime of your yes." They sat on the blanket together under the stars, her head on his shoulder, his hand resting on the swell of her stomach. For the first time in years, Julian Knox didn't feel like he was running from anything. He was running toward it. The hospital room was quiet, dimly lit by the soft amber glow of a wall sconce. Julian sat motionless in the vinyl chair beside the bed, shirt wrinkled, hair messy, eyes wide. In his arms, 2 swaddled newborns. Tiny fists, matching baby blue beanies. One yawned. The other blinked at him like he held the entire world. He did. He was crying. Openly. Freely. And he didn't care. Noelle watched him from the bed, her body aching, her heart full. "You're holding them like they're made of glass," she said, voice hoarse. "They are," Julian whispered. "No," she smiled, exhausted but glowing. "They're made of love." He looked at her then, eyes red but shining. "They have your lips, and your eyes." He stood, carefully placing both boys in the bassinet beside her bed. Then he climbed into bed with her, wrapping her in his arms, his lips brushing her forehead. "I have never," he whispered, "in my life, felt this much." Noelle buried her face in his chest. "I know. Me too." They lay there, skin to skin, the weight of what they'd created settling in, 2 perfect boys breathing softly just inches away. After a while, the nurse knocked once and stepped in. "You two okay?" Julian nodded. "Just want to check your vitals," the nurse said to Noelle. "And then I'll give you both some privacy." The moment she left, Julian turned to her again. "You're incredible," he said, running his fingers through her hair. "You say that like I didn't just curse you out mid-labor. You did, but I deserved it." She laughed softly. "I still want ice cream. Already ordered. 2 pints, both your favorites." She blinked. "I married a genius." "Not yet," he grinned. "But you're stuck with me anyway." Noelle leaned in and kissed him, slow, soft, lingering. "Good." He touched her belly gently, now empty, but still sacred. "I can't believe they're ours." "Believe it," she said, eyes flicking toward the twins. "We made them. With passion. And maybe a little recklessness." "I'd do it all over again," he whispered. She smirked. "Give me 6 months." Julian grinned and leaned down to kiss her neck. "We'll see." His hand drifted beneath the hospital gown, fingers trailing up her thigh. She gasped. "Julian, I need you," he murmured, breath hot in her ear. "Right now." She laughed, breathless. "We just had babies." "I know. And you're still the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." He kissed her again, deeper this time. His hand slid higher. She didn't stop him. Her body was sore, but still his. Her pulse quickened, her thighs parting without thinking. He touched her carefully, reverently. She moaned into his mouth. "You're insane," she whispered. "I'm yours," he corrected. And there, in the soft silence of a hospital room, with their newborn sons beside them, Julian Knox made love to the woman who had saved him. Not out of lust, but out of something far more powerful. Gratitude, commitment, worship. 1 year later, the grocery aisle looked the same. A little brighter, maybe. The roses fresher. But the corner near the display still held a quiet stillness. Julian pushed the double stroller slowly. 2 baby boys nestled inside. Matching denim overalls, curly hair poking from under soft cotton caps. One was chewing on a giraffe teether. The other was fast asleep, lips parted in a dreamy pout. Noelle walked beside him in heels and diamonds. Not the flashy kind, the elegant kind, the kind that said she wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. Julian glanced at her. She hadn't seen him staring. She was too busy pointing at the exact place where he'd once crumbled to his knees. "I found you right there," she said, smiling. He stepped closer, wrapped an arm around her waist, and kissed her bare shoulder. "Correction. You saved me right there." She turned to face him, eyes warm. "And now? Now I live for this," he said. He brushed his hand along the stroller, then gently lifted both boys into his arms, one on each side. Noelle watched him, her chest full. "You've gotten good at that," she teased. "They're the best investment I've ever made," he said, kissing each forehead in turn. The boys cooed softly, snuggling into their father's chest. "I used to come here at 3 a.m. for snacks and bad decisions," she said, laughing. "Now you leave with diapers and a billionaire." She raised an eyebrow. "Correction, you were a billionaire. You're just mine now." Julian leaned in and kissed her slowly, right there in the middle of aisle 9. No cameras, no headlines, just them. When he pulled back, he whispered, "You gave me everything I didn't know I needed." She smiled. Twice over, they stood there a moment longer, the 4 of them. Noelle looked down at her sons, then up at Julian. "Would you do it all again?" she asked. In a heartbeat, she leaned her head on his shoulder as he held their boys, and together they turned back toward the exit, past the roses, past the memories, into the life they'd built from a moment that began in heartbreak. Only now, everything felt whole. Not perfect, just right. If this story touched your heart, take a moment, just one moment, and tap that like button. It helps YouTube know this story matters. It helps us reach someone who might be crying in their own aisle tonight, waiting to be reminded that love still exists. Have you ever met someone when your world was falling apart? Someone who didn't fix you, but simply stayed? If you believe in second chances, if you believe that even from shattered pieces, something beautiful can be built, type "I believe in love" in the comments. Your words might inspire someone else to hold on a little longer. And hey, if you're new here, welcome to Love in Twilights. We tell stories that remind you that healing is possible, love is real, and sometimes the best beginnings are disguised as endings. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and join our growing family. We've got more stories that'll make you cry, smile, and believe all over again. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we tell transformations. And yours might be next. Before we dive into this breathtaking love story, I'm asking from the heart, if you believe in healing, in second chances, in the kind of love that fights to rise again, like this video right now, comment your favorite part when it hits you. And don't forget to subscribe to Love in Twilights, because every like and comment helps YouTube push this story to more people who need it. Now, let's begin. Because what happened tonight changed everything. It had been exactly 1 year since the aisle. Since the scandal that turned whispers into headlines. Since Julian Reeves, the billionaire once left at the altar, met Noelle, with mascara down her cheeks and hope bleeding through her voice. Tonight, they were back where society loved them best, in the spotlight. The gala was held at the Whitmore Conservatory in Manhattan, a sprawling glass palace lit with golden chandeliers and sharp-eyed socialites. Cameras flashed like fireworks. Diamonds glittered across the room like constellations. But nothing shone like her. Noelle stood at the top of the marble staircase, draped in a red velvet gown that kissed every curve like it had been poured onto her. The plunging neckline made statements Julian had no patience for other men hearing. Her hair was pinned in loose waves, a single strand teasing her collarbone. Julian couldn't look away, and neither could anyone else. He stepped beside her in a sharp black tuxedo, jaw tight, fingers brushing her lower back like he couldn't help himself. Whispers spread like wine stains. Is that her? After everything, she came back? She looks powerful. They descended together, Noelle's hand resting just above Julian's heart. With each step, the world seemed to forget the past and remember only the power of now. By the 3rd glass of champagne, Noelle had survived 3 women trying to corner her in the powder room, 1 tabloid journalist, pretending to be an event photographer, and at least 2 sugar-coated insults from a woman who once called her unpolished. Julian had stayed by her side for most of the evening, only briefly pulled away for a donation announcement. When he returned, his eyes darkened the moment they landed on her again. "I told you not to wear that dress," he said under his breath as he handed her a flute of champagne. She sipped. "Because it's red? Because it makes me want to throw you over a balcony?" She smiled into her glass. How romantic. Later, as the night began to wind down and the orchestra switched to a slower tempo, Julian leaned in behind her. "Come with me." She raised a brow. Now, he didn't answer, just took her hand and led her away. They slipped through the crowd, through the back corridor, and up a private staircase. At the rooftop, the city lay below them like an offering, New York's lights trembling under the stars. Noelle turned to say something, but the words caught in her throat. Julian was already pulling her in. His mouth crashed against hers, desperate, claiming hot. There was no gentleness here, no performance. This wasn't the curated billionaire and the elegant woman on his arm. This was the man who'd begged for forgiveness. This was the woman who had walked away once and nearly didn't come back. He spun her toward the stone wall, hands roaming. Her breath caught as he pressed her against it, lips dragging down her neck. "I've missed this," he growled into her skin. "You had it this morning," she gasped. "Not like this. Not when the world's watching, but only you can touch me." He didn't wait. Her dress lifted. His belt dropped. And under the stars, with the city as their witness and love still sharp between them, he claimed her all over again. The cold stone wall scraped lightly against her bare back as Julian pinned her between it and the weight of his hunger. The silk of her gown bunched around her hips, exposing smooth skin to the night air. She gasped as his fingers dug into her thighs, lifting her effortlessly as her heels clattered to the rooftop floor. The city buzzed below them. But up here, it was just them. Julian kissed her like a starving man. Deep, messy, nothing polite. His hands moved with the urgency of a year's worth of restraint, now obliterated by her. Curves and the sound of her whispering his name like a sin she wanted to keep repeating. "Noelle." He groaned, voice hoarse. "I wanted to wait. I wanted this to be slow." She bit his lower lip, tugging until he growled. "Then why are you still dressed?" That was all the permission he needed. His jacket hit the ground first, then his shirt, buttons flying. She ran her hands down the hard planes of his chest, nails grazing, and felt his body shudder under her touch. He was beautiful like this, powerful and undone, entirely hers. She tugged at his belt, pulled it free with one swift motion and let it drop between them. His trousers followed. The heat between them could have set fire to the night sky. "Noelle," he said again, voice breaking this time. She cupped his face, pulled him closer, her lips brushing his. "Take me like you thought you lost me." That shattered whatever fragile self-control he had left. His mouth claimed hers again, rougher now, tongue stroking deep as he pressed fully into her. She moaned into his mouth, hips arching, body tightening around him like she never wanted to let go. Their rhythm was wild and frantic, no choreography, just raw need. Every thrust was a memory, every kiss a promise never to repeat the mistakes that nearly tore them apart. He grabbed her wrists and pinned them above her head, locking eyes with her. "I still wake up afraid you're gone." She wrapped her legs tighter around his waist. "I'm not going anywhere. You said that once before, and this time, I mean it with everything inside me." Julian's movements slowed just enough to drive her mad. He rolled his hips, grinding deep, kissing down her throat until she was gasping his name between choked sobs of pleasure. Her moans echoed across the rooftop, tangled with the wind, her cries carried into the sky like sacred songs. He buried his face in her neck, breathing her in. "Tell me this is real." She kissed his temple, forehead, lips. "You're the only real thing in my world." He released her wrists. She immediately wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him even closer, biting his shoulder to muffle the cry that tore from her throat. They moved together like they'd never been apart. Every thrust was a question, every gasp an answer. He whispered her name again and again like a vow he was terrified to break. As they reached the peak, together, she held his face in her hands and whispered, "You're home now." He came undone inside her, body shuddering against hers, mouth captured in a kiss that felt like absolution. They didn't speak for a long time. Julian held her against the wall, her legs still wrapped around him, both of them drenched in sweat and moonlight. When he finally stepped back, gently setting her down, she smoothed her gown over her hips. He watched her, completely unashamed of the way his body still trembled in the aftershock of her. She adjusted her hair, then looked up at him with a smirk. "So, how's that for a return to society?" He chuckled, chest still rising and falling. "I don't care what they say downstairs. I just need you to keep showing up like this. I wore this dress for you, you know," she said, walking toward the glass railing, overlooking the city. He followed, wrapping his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. "I should buy you 10 more. "No," she turned in his arms. "You should wear me out in each one." He groaned. "You're going to kill me. I'm going to love you until you forget what hurting felt like." He brushed her cheek with his thumb. "Then promise me, if the past ever finds its way back to us, you'll fight for me, like I'd burn the world for you." She nodded, forehead pressed to his. "Only if you never lie to me again, not even to protect me." Julian's face turned serious, gaze locking with hers. Deal? For the first time since they arrived, she relaxed fully in his arms. From somewhere below, the orchestra resumed playing. But up here, there was no music. Only the beating of two hearts that had once been broken, and now were beginning to heal. Noelle didn't notice the first ding on her phone. She and Julian were still in bed, wrapped in each other beneath the softest linen sheets money could buy. The sun had barely broken through the Manhattan skyline, and the only light in the room came from the glow of their skin. He was half asleep, arms wrapped tightly around her waist, head buried in her chest, like he never wanted to wake up anywhere else. She was stroking his hair when the second ding came, then a third, then a buzz. She frowned and reached for the phone on the nightstand. Subject, trending. She opened a message. Attached was a photo. The breath caught in her throat. Her heart slowed, then sped up violently. It was Julian, in Rome, arms around a woman she didn't recognize, a woman with legs like runway models and eyes that gleamed with seduction. Her lips were dangerously close to Julian's cheek. His hand rested on the small of her back. The timestamp was from 4 months ago, right before she gave birth to the twins. Noelle sat up straight in bed. Julian stirred, his arms loosening from her body. What time is it?" She didn't answer. Her thumb shook as she scrolled. Headline: Billionaire Groom spotted with mystery woman while pregnant fiancé waits a tea. Home subhead: Sources confirm encounter occurred in Rome, months before birth of twins. Her chest tightened. The blood in her body felt like ice. She scrolled further. There were more photos. Another one of Julian walking beside the same woman, his face neutral but hers. Hers was gleaming with conquest. And the name: Cassandra Vance, socialite, heiress, former sister-in-law of Julian's ex-fiancé. Noelle dropped the phone like it burned her. Downstairs, coffee was already brewing when Julian walked into the kitchen, shirtless and humming. Noelle didn't look at him. She was sitting at the marble island, her back straight, her face unreadable. He walked up behind her and kissed her shoulder. "Morning, beautiful. Did last night really happen, or was that another one of my filthy dreams?" She slid her phone across the counter toward him. He picked it up. His smile fell. She didn't say a word. He stared at the screen, and for a moment, his silence was more deafening than any scream. "Noelle, tell me this isn't real." His jaw clenched. "It's not what you think." She stood, arms crossed, fury simmering beneath her calm. "Oh, then help me understand what I'm looking at, because from here, it looks like the man who begged me to trust him was entertaining another woman while I was swollen with his children. I didn't cheat on you. Did you lie to me?" He opened his mouth, closed it. She nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." Julian followed her as she stormed out of the kitchen. "Listen to me. It was never what they're making it look like. Yes, I was in Rome. Yes, Cassandra showed up. But I didn't plan it. I didn't invite her. You held her. You let her touch you. She was blackmailing me." That stopped Noelle in her tracks. She turned slowly. "What?" She had pictures from years ago, from before you, from when I was with Vanessa. She threatened to leak them, edit them to make it look like I was a predator. Said she'd sell them to tabloids unless I gave her $5 million. Noelle's eyes narrowed. "And you didn't think to tell me?" "I didn't want to drag you into it." "So you dragged me into this instead? A headline, a scandal, a picture that makes me look like a fool." Julian's voice rose. "I was trying to protect you." "No," she said, stepping closer, voice shaking. "You were trying to protect yourself." Back in their bedroom, she yanked open drawers and began throwing clothes into a bag. Julian stood at the door, his face pale. "Please, don't walk out over this. I gave you everything," she whispered. "I gave you a second chance. I raised your children. I chose you after the whole world mocked me for it. I love you. You betrayed me, if not with your body, then with your silence." She zipped the bag and walked past him, brushing his arm. He tried to stop her. "Noelle, I need time." Her voice was cold. She left him standing there, shirtless, wordless, shaking. Back at her old condo, Noelle sat on the floor of the nursery while the twins napped beside her. She stared at the wall, unblinking. Her heart didn't just ache, it throbbed. Julian's betrayal wasn't in what he did. It was in what he hid. He had kissed her like he needed her, touched her like she was his only world, looked at her like salvation. And yet, Eid still kept secrets. She wasn't sure what broke her more, the scandal or the fact that she could still feel him between her thighs from the night before. The heat of his touch still lingered on her skin. Her body missed him even when her trust refused to. She hated that. Across town, Julian stood in his office, phone in hand. He had already fired his entire PR team. He had issued no comment. And yet, the internet was ablaze. TikTok edits of his betrayal, #Noelle deserves better trending, and Cassandra? Silent. He knew she was watching the chaos, reveling in it. She always wanted the spotlight, and now she had it, by torching his name and his relationship. He stared at a framed photo of Noelle on his desk, one from the twins' christening. She was holding them both in white silk gowns, her smile radiant, eyes full of trust. And he'd broken it. Not with sex, not with betrayal in bed, but with a lie. 4 months earlier, Rome. The streets were too beautiful to be comforting. Julian leaned against the railing of his hotel suite's balcony, the ancient skyline glowing orange with the last light of day. The Tiber River snaked below, and the echo of scooters hummed in the distance. But his mind wasn't on the city. It was on the call he had just ended. Noelle was back in New York, 8 months pregnant. He'd begged her not to come on this trip, knowing the stress of travel wasn't safe. She'd agreed reluctantly, but her voice over the phone had carried a weight he couldn't ignore. Fatigue, anxiety, fear. He missed her, missed the way she looked at him when no one else was watching, missed her hand resting on the swell of her belly like a prayer she didn't realize she was saying. Missed home. He was heading back in the morning, and then came the knock. 3 sharp taps, too confident to be room service. He frowned and opened the door. Cassandra stood in the hallway like she belonged there. Tall, poised, lips redder than sin, wrapped in a backless silk dress that didn't leave much to the imagination. Her blonde hair fell in loose waves down her shoulders. Her smile was slow and knowing. Julian. His stomach sank. What the hell are you doing here? She walked past him, completely uninvited. You don't text. You don't answer calls. You act like we weren't practically family once. You dated my ex. I don't owe you anything. She turned to face him, unbothered. I'm not here to play catch-up. I'm here with a deal. He crossed his arms. Say it, then get out. Cassandra sat on the edge of the sofa, crossing her legs slowly. She pulled out her phone and tapped a few times. Recognize this? She tossed the phone to him. On the screen, a grainy photo of Julian from years ago, shirtless in a hotel pool, kissing a woman who was clearly drunk. But the angle made it look worse, like he was the aggressor, not the partner. It wasn't true, but the image could be twisted into anything. There's more, Cassandra said smoothly. Clips, screenshots, dates, context won't matter. You know how this game works. Julian tossed the phone back. You've been sitting on this for years. She nodded. I was waiting for the right time. What do you want? I want $5 million, or I send it to every outlet in the country. He stared at her, disgust crawling under his skin. That's extortion. She smirked. That's survival. I'm broke, Julian. My father cut me off. My sister's name still opens doors, but my bank account's bone dry. You think threatening me will fix that? She stood, sauntering closer. No, but you're not really going to let the world cancel you again, are you? Not with your girlfriend about to pop out heirs to your empire. Not with you finally climbing back into the public's good graces. Julian's fists clenched. You're disgusting. You say that, she said, stepping closer, running her fingers down his arm. But I know the way you used to look at me. He shoved her hand away. That was years ago. I was drunk, desperate. And now? She whispered, tilting her head. You're just desperate. He didn't mean to do it. Not really. But when she leaned in and kissed him, quick, manipulative, viciously soft, he froze. It only lasted a second, but a second was enough. He pushed her back. Get out. Cassandra stumbled slightly, then straightened with a wicked grin. So much for loyalty. He grabbed the hotel phone and dialed security. Escort her out. Now. Before they arrived, she turned back at the door. Smile next time. It makes the pictures look more consensual. The door slammed shut behind her. Julian didn't sleep that night. He sat awake at the edge of the bed, staring into nothing, running over every decision that brought him to this moment. He should have told Noelle. Should have warned her about Cassandra. should have fought harder sooner. But he hadn't. Instead, he kept the shame to himself, believing he could control it, believing that if he stayed silent long enough, it would fade. He didn't know Cassandra had hired a photographer, didn't know a picture would end up online, didn't know the past could still poison the future so thoroughly. Back in the present, Julian stared at the email again. The photo, the accusations. Noelle had seen all of it now. He'd tried to protect her, and in doing so, he'd hurt her worse. Meanwhile, Noelle sat on her couch, Cassandra's name pulled up on her tablet screen. She clicked through news clippings, blog gossip, old Instagram posts. Everything painted the woman as a socialite teetering on the edge, always present at parties, always just adjacent to power. A woman who never built anything of her own but fed off what others had. One article caught her attention, heiress in free fall. Cassandra Vance's lavish lifestyle crumbles after family cutoff. She read every word, then closed the tab and stared at the twins sleeping beside her. She wasn't going to let another woman's desperation ruin her family. But she didn't know if she could look Julian in the eyes again. Not until she understood why he hadn't told her. Later that evening, a knock sounded at her door. She opened it cautiously. Julian stood there, exhausted, unshaven, holding a folder in one hand and a small stuffed bunny in the other. "Before you slam the door," he said quietly, "just let me say one thing." She crossed her arms. "One." He held out the folder. "Everything I should have told you from the start. The photos, the texts, my lawyer's report, security logs, all of it." She took it without a word. "And this." He held out the bunny. "It's for Eva. She sleeps with it when she misses you." Noelle hesitated, then took that too. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said. "I just want you to know the truth before you decide whether you can ever trust me again." She didn't respond, but she didn't close the door either. That night, after putting the twins to bed, Noelle sat with the folder in her lap. She opened it, and as she read, piece by piece, her chest ached for a new reason. Julian hadn't lied to betray her. He'd lied because he didn't know how to carry shame and love at the same time. Because some men didn't know how to ask for help. Because his fear of losing her was bigger than his ability to be honest. She closed the folder with trembling hands and stared out the window, wondering if there was still a version of them worth saving. Noelle didn't text, didn't call. She just showed up. Julian opened the door to his penthouse in Midtown and froze when he saw her standing there, coat wrapped tight around her body, eyes sharper than they'd ever been. "Can I come in?" she asked flatly. He nodded and stepped aside, heart hammering. The moment she entered, the temperature dropped. She didn't sit. She didn't take off her coat. She pulled the folder out of her bag and dropped it on the kitchen counter. "I read it," she said. Julian waited, unsure if that was a good thing or a warning. "Everything checks out," she added. His breath left his chest. But then she turned toward him, arms folded, jaw clenched. "You were in a room with her, alone, while I was home weeks from delivering your children." "I know. You let her kiss you." I froze. "That's not an excuse," she snapped. "You didn't just betray me with your mouth, Julian. You betrayed me with your silence. You let me believe everything was perfect when you were hiding this ticking time bomb under our bed." He stepped forward. "I thought I was protecting you." "No." Her voice cracked. "You were protecting the version of yourself you wanted me to see." Julian braced himself. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth," she said, walking toward him now. "All of it. No rehearsals, no boardroom charm, just you." He hesitated, then let the words pour out. I panicked. She showed up. I didn't know what she had. She was threatening everything. My company, our reputation, the family we hadn't even started yet. And I was afraid. She blinked. "Afraid of her?" "No." His voice dropped. "Afraid you'd leave me if you saw who I used to be. Before you, before the twins, before I had a reason to be good." Noelle stared at him, tears building in the corners of her eyes. "You were supposed to trust me enough to be weak." He stepped closer. "I didn't know how." Her voice shook. "You still don't." The silence that followed was jagged. Julian broke it. "I miss you." She laughed once, bitter. "You miss the version of me who didn't know." "No," he said. "I miss the version of us that didn't need secrets to survive." She dropped her coat to the floor. Underneath, she wore a black lace bodysuit. His breath hitched. "I didn't come here to argue," she whispered. I came here to see what we have left. He stood frozen. What are you saying? I'm saying I want the truth, she said, walking toward him slowly, each step calculated, dangerous. And I want it from your hands, from your mouth, from your body. Julian's throat tightened. You want to punish me? She stopped inches from him. I want to see if I can still feel you. If there's anything worth saving between us that isn't rage and regret. She reached for his belt. He didn't stop her. The second the leather slid free, something snapped between them. He grabbed her by the waist, spun her into the wall, and kissed her with a hunger that bordered on desperate. Her nails dug into his chest. He bit her lower lip. The kiss turned wild. Their clothes disappeared in pieces, his shirt torn, her lace ripped down the middle. She didn't flinch. She wanted it broken. Julian lifted her onto the kitchen island and entered her in one swift motion. She cried out, rage and pleasure tangled. His hands gripped her thighs. Her legs wrapped around his hips. They moved together like enemies trying to make peace in the only way they knew how. Say it, she gasped, voice trembling. Say what? That you were scared? I was. That you lied? I did. That you still love me? I never stopped. The rhythm turned brutal, every thrust an apology, every moan a scream. She pulled his hair, bit his shoulder, made him look her in the eyes. He kissed her tears. She slapped his chest, then kissed the spot. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was survival. When she came, it was with a sob that broke his heart wide open. He followed seconds later, collapsing against her, chest heaving. They stayed like that, tangled in silence, hearts pounding like drums in a funeral procession. Eventually, she pushed him off gently and slid off the counter. He reached for her. She shook her head. No. Noelle. She grabbed her coat from the floor. That was closure. He looked like she'd hit him. No, he said. Don't say that. She met his eyes, raw and broken. You hurt me, and maybe I hurt you back tonight, but that doesn't make us even. It just makes us tired. She walked to the door, paused, then turned her head slightly. Get your soul together, Julian. If you want to fight for me, fight differently. And then she left. He stood there completely bare, with scratches down his back and love still trembling in his chest. And for the first time in years, Julian Reeves had no strategy. Only longing, only silence, only the sound of her heels fading down the hallway. Julian didn't sleep, not even after the shower, not even after pouring himself a drink he never touched, not even after replaying every moment of her walking out all over again. The cold side of the bed reminded him of her. The bruises on his chest reminded him of how close she'd let him get. Just before she left again, he stared at the ceiling in the darkness of his hotel suite, completely still. But his mind never stopped moving. It was after midnight when the knock came. 3 quiet taps. Hesitant. He rose from the bed, heart already pounding. Opened the door slowly. She stood there, hood up, lips parted, eyes tired. No words. Just silence thick with unfinished sentences. He stepped back, letting her in. Noelle walked past him like a woman walking through a fire she wasn't sure she'd survive. She stood in the middle of the room, hands tucked in the sleeves of her coat. He didn't move. She turned to face him, unzipped the coat slowly, and let it fall. She wore nothing underneath, not even shoes. Julian exhaled sharply, like her body had knocked the wind out of him. Noelle, I don't want to talk, she said. I've done enough of that. She stepped closer. Tonight. I just want to feel something that doesn't lie. He walked to her, barely breathing. What are you asking for? She looked up at him, voice low, shaking. I'm asking you to ruin me, and then remind me who I am. The kiss started soft, deceptively soft. Then she bit his lip. He groaned and spun her around, pressing her against the wall with one hand, around her throat, firm but not hurting, just enough to make her shiver. She arched into him, mouth parted, eyes fluttering closed. Is this what you want? He asked, voice ragged. No, she whispered, dragging her nails down his chest. It's what I need. He kissed her again, this time with no hesitation, tongue deep, hands everywhere. She moaned into his mouth, grinding against him until he stumbled back, pulling her toward the bed. Clothes? Forgotten. Time? Irrelevant. The only thing that existed was the fire. Julian dropped her onto the bed and crawled over her like a man on the edge of worship and sin. She wrapped her legs around him, pulled him close, and when he slid into her, they both gasped, raw, breathless. She moved first. Hard, fast. She rode him like a woman chasing fury and freedom, hips slamming into his, breasts bouncing, mouth open, in a silent cry as she took every inch of him like she owned him and wanted to break him in the process. He grabbed her waist, forced her down harder. She threw her head back, his name ripped from her throat. He gritted his teeth. You feel like war. She leaned forward, lips grazing his. Then fight. They flipped positions again and again, sheets tangled, skin slick, bodies grinding like they were trying to erase the space between them. He had her bent over the side of the bed, hair fisted in his hand, her back arched, her body trembling. Then he laid her flat, kissed every inch of her like she was a sacred map he'd forgotten how to read. His mouth moved lower, tongue circling, teasing, driving her insane until she screamed into a pillow and came hard, legs shaking, eyes rolling back. He didn't stop. He kissed her until she couldn't beg anymore, until she collapsed in a puddle of sweat and sobs. Only then did he finally let himself lose control, slamming into her with everything he'd held back. After the storm, they lay in silence. Noelle's head rested on his chest. His fingers trailed lazy circles along her spine. Neither of them spoke, not because there wasn't more to say, but because for once they didn't have to. Sometime later, when her breathing calmed and his heart stopped racing, Julian kissed her forehead. I thought I lost you tonight. She looked up at him, eyes glassy. Maybe you did. His chest tightened. But you found me again, she whispered, even if it was just for now. He held her tighter, as if that could stop morning from coming, as if he could freeze time. Eventually she sat up, wrapping the sheet around her body. She looked out the window, the city still glowing below. I hate how much I love you. He sat up behind her, kissed her shoulder. I don't deserve you. No, she said softly. But you're still mine. They stared out into the dark together. Two flawed souls. Still bleeding. Still choosing each other, if only for tonight. Julian was in the middle of reviewing quarterly reports when the front desk buzzed. Mr. Reeves, his assistant said over the speaker, voice tight. Cassandra Vance is here. She says she has a personal meeting scheduled with you. Julian sat up straight. I didn't put her on the schedule. She's being persistent. He could hear the tension. Let her up, Julian said, jaw tightening. And alert security to wait by the elevators in case I need them. Cassandra entered like she owned the place. A tailored blazer cinched tightly at her waist, a lace bralette peeking from beneath. Thigh-high boots, hair sleek, red lipstick drawn with precision. Julian stood from his desk, expression unreadable. Didn't expect to see you again, he said coolly. She closed the door behind her, slowly. You should have. I'm not one to disappear quietly. He didn't invite her to sit. Cassandra walked toward him anyway, running her fingers across the edge of his desk. I thought you'd be more grateful, she purred. That photo didn't hurt your brand. It made you more interesting. Julian narrowed his eyes. Interesting isn't worth what I lost. You didn't lose her, Cassandra said, smirking. She's still wearing your name like it's a crown. He said nothing. She circled the desk slowly, then stopped in front of him, her voice dropping. I'm here to give you one more chance. At what? To remember what you had before her? Julian scoffed. You mean chaos? Lies? Ego? I mean fire, she said, stepping close, placing a hand on his chest. You didn't used to need permission to take what you wanted. I grew up. You got soft. No, he said, taking her wrist and removing her hand. I got something you'll never have, love, and the strength to protect it. She leaned in, her mouth inches from his. And then the door clicked open. Noelle stepped inside, quiet and calm. She didn't look shocked. She didn't scream. She just stared. Cassandra turned with a grin. Oh, good. I was hoping you'd walk in. Makes things more theatrical. Noelle didn't blink. I watched the whole thing from the hallway. Julian's eyes widened. I asked your assistant to let me in 10 minutes ago. She agreed, once I explained who Cassandra was. Noelle stepped forward slowly, each movement graceful and dangerous. You really came here to seduce him again? She asked Cassandra directly. Cassandra shrugged. Old habits die hard. Noelle tilted her head. You always mistake desperation for charm? Cassandra's smile faded. Careful. No, Noelle said, stepping closer. You be careful. Then she grabbed Cassandra's wrist. Hard. The socialite gasped. Julian froze. Noelle dragged her toward the door, heels clicking sharply across the marble floor. Cassandra tried to jerk free. You don't want to cause a scene, she warned. I don't mind scenes anymore, Noelle replied, especially when I'm the one writing the ending. She opened the door and shoved Cassandra out. 2 security guards were already standing there. She won't be needing another invitation, Noelle said. They nodded. Cassandra composed herself, threw one last icy glare over her shoulder, and walked away. Inside, the silence cracked like thunder. Julian stared at Noelle, stunned. You watched everything? She nodded. Every word, every move, every attempt, and she walked toward him, slow and intentional. You passed. He swallowed hard. You were testing me. No, she said, reaching him. I was watching to see if I could believe in you again. Julian let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. And do you? She slid her arms around his neck. I'm getting there. He leaned down, kissed her temple. I didn't touch her. I know. I didn't want her. I saw that too. She pressed her forehead against his. I wanted to kill her. He smirked. You kinda did. Spiritually. They both laughed. Then silence fell again. But this time, it was warm. Safe. Noelle leaned back to look at him. Do you have 10 minutes? For you? Always. Julian barely had time to lock the door before Noelle pushed him against it. Her hands gripped his lapels, pulling him close until their noses almost touched. The air between them was thick with adrenaline, hers from the confrontation, his from restraint. You let her in, she whispered. His voice was low. I didn't ask her to come, but you let her talk. I told her to leave. She stared at him for a long beat, then softly. You didn't give her anything, but I want everything. Julian swallowed. Everything? She leaned in, lips brushing his jaw. Control. Noelle turned him around and shoved him back into his office chair. Julian's eyes darkened instantly, breathing ragged. He didn't speak, didn't argue. He just watched. She unbuttoned her blouse slowly. No rush, just deliberate sensual power. Each button undone was a declaration. I'm not just back. I'm taking over. When it slipped off her shoulders, she let it fall, revealing a black lace bra that cupped her like a secret. His hand twitched. No, she said firmly. You don't touch. He froze. She straddled his lap, one hand resting on his shoulder, the other gripping his tie. I'm not here to be handled. I'm here to be obeyed. Julian's lips parted. Yes, ma'am. Her hips rolled, slow at first. He groaned, hands gripping the arms of the chair to ground himself. She leaned in, lips grazing his ear. You forgot who made you feel like this. I didn't. Then say it. You did. She kissed him. Deep, but in control. He was shaking by the time she pulled back. Keep your hands down. He nodded, jaw clenched. She pulled off her skirt, revealing lace panties that matched her bra. Then she reached for his belt and unbuckled it slowly, never breaking eye contact. Julian's breath caught. She freed him, stroked him once, then lowered herself down in one slow, deliberate motion. His head fell back with a gasp. She rode him like she was building a kingdom from his body. Every grind, every thrust was exacting, measured, intentional. She whispered in his ear between moans. This body belongs to me. He nodded. Yes, this office, this empire, your heart, mine. Only yours, he rasped. She bit his neck, hips rolling faster. You don't lie to me again. Never. You don't hide. I won't. Their rhythm grew frantic. She tightened around him, holding his face still as her forehead pressed to his. You beg now. He shuddered. Please. Say it. Please let me come. She kissed him hard. You can. The climax hit both of them like a tidal wave, raw, furious, cleansing. Julian grunted her name, body arching under her as he finally surrendered. Noelle collapsed onto his chest, both of them panting, trembling. Silence followed, but it wasn't awkward. It was reverent, like something holy had just happened. Eventually she sat back, still straddling him, brushing sweaty hair from his forehead. His voice cracked. That was... She smirked. Mine. He grinned, eyes still dazed. You've always had me. Then start acting like it. He nodded. Yes, ma'am. She laughed and climbed off his lap, adjusting her clothes. Julian stayed seated, shirt open, tie loose, pride completely dismantled. And he'd never looked more satisfied. She walked toward the door, heels clicking across the polished floor. He called after her. Where are you going? She looked back, smile playful. Back home. I'll see you tonight. That's it? Julian, she said, opening the door. You just got claimed. Then she walked out, head high, power restored, love reclaimed. They needed air. Not space. Not distance. Just air. Noelle booked the cabin without telling anyone. No PR announcements. No press-ready photos. Just a note left on Julian's desk. Pack light. Bring the twins. We leave Friday. The cabin sat deep in the woods of upstate New York. Pine trees stretched high into the sky, dusted with snow. A frozen lake shimmered at the back of the property, and the silence was uninterrupted by traffic, headlines, or unwanted memories. For the first time in months, they were unreachable, and it felt like freedom. Julian carried the twins into the cabin. Ezra and Ava bundled in matching fleece onesies, their cheeks pink from the cold. Noelle was already inside, unpacking groceries and setting logs beside the fireplace. Remind me to thank you for this later, Julian said as he shut the door and leaned against it. I forgot what quiet sounds like. Noelle looked up from arranging the pantry. It's not silence, it's peace. He smiled. Same thing, when I'm with you. The first night was uneventful, in the best way. They lit a fire, cooked together, took turns feeding the babies, laughed when Ava flung mashed carrots across the wooden floor, danced when an old jazz record played too loud. There were no interruptions, no Cassandra, no leaked photos, just warmth, just love finding its way back. Later, after the twins were asleep, they sat on the couch with mugs of cinnamon tea in hand. Julian stared into the fire. You ever wonder what we'd be like if we met under different circumstances? He asked. Noelle curled her legs beneath her. You mean if I hadn't found you crying in an aisle? He chuckled. Yeah. If I had met you in a boardroom or at a fundraiser, you wouldn't have liked me. He turned. Why not? Because I was guarded back then. I didn't trust people who smiled too easily. Julian nodded. I was too arrogant. Thought pain made me interesting. Noelle reached out, took his hand. Maybe we needed the bruises to recognize the blessing. The next morning, they took the twins on a walk through the woods, bundled in a double stroller. Frost kissed the branches. Their boots crunched through the snow. Ava babbled at the pine needles. Ezra reached out for snowflakes with wide eyes. Julian watched them closely. They're so whole. Noelle tilted her head. Why does that surprise you? He hesitated. Because I never felt that way growing up. She placed a gloved hand over his. You're giving them what you never had. Julian blinked slowly, throat tight. What if I mess it up? You will, she said softly. We both will, but we'll love them harder than we fail them. He stopped walking, pulled her close, kissed her forehead. That night, the hot tub steamed beneath the stars. Noelle stepped into the water first, her silk robe slipping to the ground. Julian followed, his gaze never leaving her. She sat across from him, knees brushing his. The stars reflected in her eyes. I'm scared sometimes, she said, voice quiet. He waited. I'm scared you'll wake up one day and realize I wasn't enough. Julian moved closer. You saved me, Noelle. That's not the same as being loved. He took her face in his hands. You're not enough for me because you rescued me. You're enough because you made me want to be a better man, without ever asking me to. She closed her eyes, tears hot against the cold air. Then prove it, she whispered. He kissed her, slow, deep, full of warmth and truth. When they made love in the water, it wasn't frantic or wild. It was patient. His hands moved over her like she was made of light. Her lips trailed down his chest like she was trying to memorize every scar. The water wrapped around them, steam rising as their bodies moved together. There were no games, no power plays, just skin. Just breath. Just two souls choosing each other all over again. Afterward, they dried off by the fire, wrapped in towels in each other, Julian whispered against her neck. I want to marry you, not for show, not because we have twins, but because you're my peace. Noelle's eyes fluttered shut, and in the hush between heartbeats, she said, then ask me when I least expect it. The fire outside the cabin flickered against the sky. Steam drifted from the hot tub, swirling into the cold air like smoke from a quiet storm. Snowflakes fell lazily onto the surface of the water and melted before they could touch skin. Julian leaned back against the wooden edge, arms stretched out, watching Noelle approach in silence. She untied her robe slowly, let it fall. She stepped barefoot onto the wooden deck, wearing nothing but skin kissed by moonlight. He didn't speak. Couldn't. She walked to the edge of the tub, meeting his eyes, then stepped in slowly, the water rising around her thighs, then hips, then breasts. She sank into the seat across from him, lips slightly parted. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. It was enough just to breathe in the same rhythm. I used to come here as a girl, Noelle said softly, her fingers tracing circles across the surface of the water. Before everything got complicated, Julian watched her closely. Before love became work, she nodded. Before trust meant risk. Before every kiss came with a question, he moved closer through the water. Do I make it easier or harder now? She reached for his hand beneath the surface, laced their fingers together. You make it worth trying. He brought their joined hands to his lips, kissed her knuckles one by one. Tell me what scares you the most, he whispered. Noelle hesitated, then answered, that one day I'll need you more than you need me, that I'll bend too far, give too much, and wake up realizing I've disappeared into your world and forgotten how to be whole on my own. Julian's eyes softened. You're the only reason my world works. There's no me without you. Say that again. He slid closer until their knees touched beneath the surface. There's no me without you. She closed her eyes, let the words soak in, then opened them with a slow burning fire behind her gaze. Then show me. She straddled him in the water, the heat wrapping around them like a secret. His hands found her waist. Her breath hitched when he slid her down, her bare skin brushing over his. Their mouths met, not desperate, not rushed, just aching, lingering. Julian traced kisses along her collarbone, down her chest, across the swell of her breasts. Noelle moaned softly, fingers tangling in his wet hair. She moved her hips slowly, teasing him, torturing them both. Now, he whispered against her skin. Please. She guided him inside her with a gasp, her nails digging into his shoulders. They moved together beneath the water, rhythm fluid, sensual, almost too slow to survive. Every thrust was controlled, every moan was real. His hands explored her back, her thighs, the delicate curve of her spine. She held his face in her hands, watching him, whispering things only he could hear. You're mine. I'm yours. Don't let go. Never. The snow fell heavier around them, unnoticed. Their bodies created waves with each movement, the water sloshing softly as they drowned in each other. He kissed her so deeply she forgot her name. She clenched around him so tightly he forgot the world. And when they came, together, it was slow, warm, complete. She shook in his arms. He held her through it, whispering love into her ear like prayer. Afterward, she rested her head on his shoulder, heart still racing. He brushed wet hair from her cheek. You were right. About what? This is peace. She smiled. You were worth the storm, she whispered. And he knew, in that moment, that nothing else mattered. Not the scandals, not the past. Only this woman. Only this love. Only forever. The market hadn't changed much. Same polished floors. Same soft jazz drifting from hidden speakers. Same aisle, fourth from the entrance, where fate had introduced chaos and love in one breath. Noelle stepped inside, confused, her heels clicking lightly as she looked around. Julian had told her to wear something simple but special. She wore a cream-knit dress that hugged her curves, paired with a long tan coat. No makeup but lip gloss. Hair pulled into a low bun. The note he'd left on her pillow that morning said, Meet me where you met me, 6 sharp, trust me. As she reached the aisle, the lights dimmed slightly. Soft golden bulbs lit the path ahead. Rows of rose petals led the way, scattered in a deliberate trail from the end of the shelf-lined corridor all the way to the center of the aisle. Candles flickered in tall glass lanterns, placed carefully between vintage crates and baskets of fruit. The scent of cinnamon and vanilla hung in the air, warm and inviting. And then she saw them, Ezra and Ava, standing at the end of the aisle in miniature tuxedos, one navy, one charcoal, with little bow ties askew and cheeks glowing with excitement. Noelle's hand flew to her mouth. They each held a sign. Ezra's read, "Mommy, will you?" Ava's read, "Say yes this time?" Noelle's eyes filled with tears before she could take her next breath. And then came Julian. He stepped out from behind the last shelf, wearing a classic black suit with no tie, top buttons undone. He looked more like himself than he ever had, confident, open, vulnerable in a way only she got to see. No one else existed. He walked to the center of the aisle, then dropped to one knee. The lights behind him made the tears in his eyes shine. "Noelle," he said, voice clear, shaking just a little, "you didn't walk into my life. You crashed through it." She laughed through her tears. "You found me at my lowest," he continued, "crying in public, ashamed of everything. And instead of walking away, you knelt beside me." The twins toddled closer, hugging her legs now. "You've given me everything. Our children, your trust, your fight. You stayed when you had every reason to leave." Noelle tried to breathe, but the emotion clung to her ribs. Julian pulled out a black velvet box, opened it. Inside was a ring unlike anything she'd seen, vintage-cut diamond with sapphire accents gleaming in soft candlelight. "I don't need redemption. I need partnership. I don't want to make up for who I was. I want to build who we're becoming." He took her hand. "Will you marry me?" She fell to her knees in front of him, wrapped her arms around his neck, and whispered, "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Julian pulled her close, burying his face in her neck, laughing and crying at once. The twins clapped. The candles flickered. The aisle, once filled with grief, was now sacred ground. Later that night, in their hotel suite overlooking the skyline, she stood in front of the mirror. Wearing nothing but the ring, Julian leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "You look like a woman who just ruined me," he murmured. She turned, her body bathed in the glow of city lights. "No," she said, voice low. "I look like a woman about to be worshipped." He crossed the room slowly, dropped to his knees behind her, pressed a kiss to the back of her thigh, then another higher up, and another still. She leaned into the mirror, hands braced, watching him as he undressed her with reverence. Not rushed, not frenzied, devoted. He took his time, traced every line, every dip of her body with his mouth and tongue, whispered words only she was meant to hear, lifted her onto the edge of the vanity, and made love to her in front of the mirror, his hands gripping her hips, her legs wrapped around him, their eyes locked in reflection. He didn't just take her, he honored her. Each thrust came with a kiss, each kiss with a vow. She came apart in his arms, crying his name into his shoulder, the diamond on her finger catching the light as she clung to him. And when he followed, buried deep, trembling, he kissed her lips and whispered, "My wife." The mirror didn't lie. It showed her flushed cheeks, her parted lips, the soft curve of her back arched beneath his hands. It showed him, eyes hungry, reverent, kneeling behind her as if in prayer. Noelle's breath fogged the glass as Julian kissed his way up her spine. He had already unzipped her gown. Now it pooled at her feet like surrender. She wore nothing but a gold anklet and the engagement ring, now fogged with steam and light. Julian stood behind her, his hands tracing her waist like she was music, and he had all night to memorize every note. "You don't belong to the world," he whispered. "You belong to me." She met his eyes in the reflection. "And you belong here." She placed his hand over her heart. "Inside this." He kissed her shoulder, then her neck, then down the curve of her back. Every touch was slow, intimate. The urgency of the past was gone. Tonight wasn't about proving. It was about presence. He lowered to his knees again, both hands on her hips, his face pressed to the small of her back. "I worship you," he whispered. She closed her eyes. "I used to chase power," he said, lips trailing along her skin. "Now all I crave is your peace." She turned, finally facing him, hair falling in soft waves over one shoulder. "You want peace?" He nodded. "Then, earn it." She stepped back and lay across the bed, legs spread slightly, ringed hand reaching for him. Julian followed, kissed his way up her inner thigh, one agonizing inch at a time. Noelle trembled. "Don't stop," she whispered. He didn't. He licked her with devotion. No hurry, no teasing, just intention. She gasped, hips rising, fingers tangling in the sheets. Her thighs squeezed around his head as she came, moaning loud enough to rattle the windows. He didn't pull away. He stayed, kissing, tasting, letting her shake against his tongue. When she finally went limp, he rose slowly, dragging his body up over hers. She reached down, guided him into her without a word. They locked eyes, and the rhythm began. It was slow, so slow it hurt, so slow it healed. She wrapped her legs around his waist, pulled him deeper, her fingers tracing the lines of his back. He kissed her as if every breath depended on it. Their bodies moved in a steady, sensual flow, like tide and moon, inevitable, eternal. He held her face as he whispered into her mouth, "You make me whole." She kissed his jaw. "You made me brave." They climaxed together, one long, breathless moment of perfect silence, then collapsed into each other, skin against skin, sweat against skin, love tangled in every heartbeat. Afterward, he carried her to the window, wrapped in a blanket. The city lights glowed around them. He held her close, her head on his chest, his hand resting over her heart. "I've had everything," he whispered. "And none of it mattered until you." She kissed his chest, right over his heartbeat, then looked up at him, eyes filled with something deeper than desire. "Don't love me because you need me," she whispered. "Love me because you choose me, every day." He cupped her jaw gently. "I do," again, again, and again. The ring sparkled between them. The mirror still reflected the evidence of what they'd become. Not a perfect love, but a chosen one, one worth kneeling for. The sun was just beginning to fall behind the cliffs of Makena, spilling molten light across the Pacific. The air smelled of plumeria and ocean salt, and the sound of waves lapping. The shore played like music against the hush of anticipation. Noelle stood barefoot in the sand. The hem of her ivory silk gown trailed behind her like a soft whisper. Her veil, sheer and delicate, fluttered in the breeze like a memory refusing to fade. Ava stood beside her in a tiny flower crown, holding the train of her dress with careful hands. Ezra, in a linen vest and rolled-up pants, gripped a velvet ring box with solemn pride. This wasn't a ceremony meant for crowds or spectacle. It was private, intentional, sacred, just family, just love, just truth. Julian waited beneath a wooden arch adorned with white orchids, barefoot like her, heart in his throat. His suit jacket hung loosely open, shirt collar unbuttoned. He looked like a man ready to receive something rare. When Noelle walked toward him, time didn't slow. It simply ceased to exist. Every step she took was quiet, sure, worthy. Julian blinked back tears before she reached him. "Hey," she whispered when she arrived. "Hi," he said, voice hoarse. They laughed softly, already crying. The officiant, a soft-spoken local woman with silver hair and a lei draped across her shoulders, smiled and nodded for them to begin. Julian went first. He took her hands in his and spoke without notes. "You found me broken and didn't try to fix me. You sat with me. You listened. You saw through everything I pretended to be. You made it safe to stop pretending. I used to think love was something to earn. But you showed me real love is offered freely, not bartered for. You've been my storm, my silence, and my peace. And now, I want to be yours, as your partner, as your protector, as your husband, for the rest of our lives." Noelle didn't rush her reply. She stared into his eyes, tears on her cheeks, then said, "You didn't rescue me. You stood beside me while I saved myself. You never made promises to be perfect. You just stayed, even when I pushed, even when I questioned everything. You stayed, and because of that, I learned to trust again. You're not my redemption story. You're the man I choose, to build the life we were never taught to believe we deserved. And today, I give you my whole heart. No walls, no conditions, just me, forever." There was no "you may now kiss the bride" needed. Julian cupped her face and kissed her like they'd just invented the word. The twins clapped. The waves crashed. The light dimmed just enough to make it all feel timeless. Later, at the edge of the cliff, they stood with their arms wrapped around each other. No guests, no reception, just champagne, just candles, just the sunset turning the sky gold. Julian took her hands again, this time without needing to speak. They swayed to music only they could hear. When he leaned in, brushing her lips, he whispered, "Married looks good on you." She smiled. "So does forever." The ocean whispered beneath their villa like a lullaby. Everything was soft, lamplight flickering in golden pools, silk sheets turned down by invisible hands, and the faint hum of jasmine wafting in from the open balcony. Noelle stood barefoot in the center of the room, her wedding gown now gone, replaced by a satin slip that kissed her body like moonlight. The fabric shimmered with every breath, clinging to her hips, dipping low between her breasts. Julian entered from behind, shirtless, barefoot. His tuxedo pants hung low on his hips, his wedding band glinting as he reached out and traced a single fingertip down her spine. "Say something," she whispered. "I've waited a lifetime for this," he said. "And yet, I still feel like I'm dreaming." She turned, sliding her arms around his neck. "Then let's never wake up." He lifted her effortlessly, laid her down on the bed like a treasured secret, and climbed over her with the kind of reverence reserved for scripture. Their eyes locked. Noelle reached for a small vial of scented oil from the nightstand, jasmine and amber, warm and earthy. She poured a few drops into her palm, then began to rub it across his chest, shoulders, neck. Julian groaned softly. "You're not seducing me," he whispered. "No?" she teased. "You're undoing me." She massaged the oil into his skin, letting her hands memorize the ridges of muscle, the slope of his collarbone, the places she already knew by heart but wanted to rediscover as his wife. "You're tense," she murmured. He chuckled. "I'm trying not to lose control." She leaned in, kissed his temple. "You don't have to try anymore." He exhaled. "I want to take my time." "You will," she promised. "But tonight, let's forget the world even spins." He reached for her slowly, pulling the satin straps from her shoulders. The slip pooled at her waist. His hands skimmed her skin as though blessing every inch. He kissed the center of her chest. Then lower still. Noelle arched, her fingers tangling in his hair, her thighs shifting. Open as he moved between them, soft tongue, steady hands, no rush. She moaned his name like a prayer. He worshipped her in silence. Again and again, until her body trembled, breath caught, and she cried out into the pillow, face flushed, heart full. Then he moved up, body pressing over hers. She wrapped her legs around him. No words this time, just feeling, slow, deep, measured. Their eyes met and stayed locked as they moved together. Noelle held his face in her hands, brushing her thumbs along his cheeks. "Love me, like I'm the only one left," she whispered. "I already do." The rhythm built gradually, slow rolls of hips, fingertips caressing, lips brushing. He whispered sweet nothings into her skin, and she answered with quiet gasps that only he could translate. He turned her gently, guided her onto her side, and pressed against her back. One arm cradled her, the other gripped her thigh as he slid back inside. The new angle was devastating. Noelle whimpered, "Julian, I've got you," he murmured into her ear. His teeth grazed her shoulder. Their bodies rocked in perfect sensual harmony, nothing rushed, nothing wild, just endless. When they came, it was together. Quiet, profound, a full-body quake that left them both breathless. He didn't pull away, didn't speak, just held her as their bodies calmed, skin glistening, legs tangled. Noelle turned her head to kiss his lips gently. "Still dreaming?" He nodded. "But if this is a dream," he whispered, "I never want to wake up." Hours later, the moon high and soft through the curtains. They lay tangled in sheets and limbs, neither able to sleep. Noelle traced circles over his chest. Julian kissed the top of her head. "I've had a lot of nights," he said, "but none like this." She smiled. "It's because you've never had a night that was finally yours." He looked down at her. "I don't want just a night," he said. "I want a lifetime of these." She nodded. "Then let's make this the first of forever." The villa was quiet. Golden morning light poured through gauzy white curtains. The air smelled faintly of salt, sea, and something sweeter, warm skin, lavender soap, and the soft echo of love still lingering on the sheets. Julian stirred first. He turned, eyes still heavy with sleep, and found Noelle already awake beside him. Her hand was resting on her stomach, her fingers spread wide and still. She wasn't smiling. Not yet. But her eyes were bright in a different way. Soft, hopeful, heavy with something new. He sat up slowly, brushing a kiss along her bare shoulder. You okay? She looked at him, pupils wide and warm. I think. She hesitated. I think we're not just two anymore. Julian blinked, then looked down at her hand, then back at her. A moment passed, and another. Then the realization crashed through his chest like thunder wrapped in light. You're... She nodded, lips trembling. I'm late. I feel it, like I did the first time. Julian pressed his forehead against hers, hands already trembling against her hips. You're carrying our third? She whispered. Yes. Then came the tears. His first, then hers. They didn't speak again for a while. Words would have only diluted the moment. Later, they stood on the balcony wrapped in a single blanket, facing the horizon. The ocean stretched infinitely in front of them, and yet everything they ever needed was behind them, wrapped in each other's arms. Julian held her close, palm gently resting on her belly. Do you think it's another girl? He asked softly. She smiled. I think it's love. Whatever name it takes. He nodded slowly. She didn't just give me twins, Julian whispered. She gave me a life, a love I never have to earn, just honor. Noelle turned to him, eyes shining. And that's what you'll do? He kissed her. Tender, slow, no need to prove anything. I already am. Julian watched Noelle from the bedroom doorway. She stood in the nursery-to-be, barefoot in a pale robe, holding a mug of tea in both hands. Her other hand rested gently over her belly. The windows were open. Morning poured in like soft gold. Sunlight wrapped around her like she belonged to it. And maybe she did. There was something about her now, something still, grounded and fiercely at peace. She didn't need applause, didn't perform for approval. She simply existed as a woman who had fought hard for her softness. He stepped behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Their silence had evolved into a shared language. Later that day, as the twins napped, Julian sat with Noelle on the back porch swing. The breeze moved lazily through the trees. Their hands were intertwined, resting on her thigh. He turned to her. Do you think we'll ever tell them everything? She looked over, curious. The twins? He nodded. About how we met. The tears, the fights, the almosts, the failures. She smiled softly. Maybe not all at once. And the scandals? The mistakes? We'll tell them the parts that matter. Which parts are those? She leaned against his shoulder, kissed his jaw, and said that we loved recklessly, that we hurt deeply, and that every time we broke, we chose to build again. Maybe you've been through it too. Maybe your version of love didn't come wrapped in perfection. Maybe it came messy, loud, undone. Maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe you've done the betraying. Maybe you're still trying to forgive yourself for the years you stayed quiet when you should have screamed. But if you're listening right now, know this. Love isn't earned. It's chosen, over and over, through chaos, through storms, through the mornings when your body aches from holding in your pain. The kind of love that lasts doesn't always start clean, but if it's real, it will teach you to stay, not because you have to, but because nothing else feels like home. Hi, family. If you made it to this point in the story, you felt it, didn't you? You saw yourself in her silence. You saw your fears in his failures. You saw your hope in their healing. Because this wasn't just about Noelle and Julian. This was about all of us who've ever fought to believe in love again. This was about you. So if this story meant something to you, I need you to do something for me. Don't scroll past this moment. Instead, leave a comment. Tell me which moment hit you the hardest. Which line made you pause. Which scene made you cry, or remember, or feel again. Like this video. Because when you engage, YouTube sees that you care. And it tells the algorithm, this story matters. Subscribe to Love and Twilights, so you never miss a story that just might meet you exactly where you are. Share this with someone who needs it, someone healing, someone learning to forgive, someone trying again. She didn't rise for applause. She rose for her name. And if you're listening now, maybe it's time you reclaimed yours too.